Japan's new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and U.S. President Donald Trump held a phone call on Tuesday that underscores the shifting dynamics of Indo-Pacific diplomacy and spotlights how Tokyo is recalibrating its posture amid mounting tensions with Beijing. For Tokyo, the call was a clear signaling moment, after comments by Prime Minister Takaichi earlier this month triggered a diplomatic rupture with Beijing over the question of Taiwan and Japan's possible response. The conversation with Trump offered reassurance that the U.S. Japan alliance remains at the heart of Tokyo's strategy. At the Tokyo residence, shortly after the call, Prime Minister Takaichi told reporters that President Trump mentioned that he and I are extremely good friends and that I should call him anytime. She added that it was the U.S. president who took the initiative to reach out to her. These remarks came as Japan and China remain locked in a diplomatic standoff following Tokyo's unusually direct language on Taiwan's defense. Trump, in his briefing to Takaichi, explained the latest state of U.S.-China relations, including his recent discussion with President Xi Jinping of China. Japanese officials, speaking under condition of anonymity, confirmed that the U.S.-Japan relationship and the wider Indo-Pacific security environment were central to the call. From Tokyo's vantage point, the message was meant to dispel concern. Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara told reporters that stable U.S.-China relations were extremely important for the international community, including Japan. He declined to comment on the specific contents of the Trump-Xi call. Earlier this month, Prime Minister Takaichi, in a session of Parliament, made remarks to the effect that if China were to use force against Taiwan, such an act could be regarded by Japan as an existential threat, requiring Japan's military response. That comment sparked a furious backlash in Beijing. China issued travel warnings, raised diplomatic objections, and signaled a boycott of some Japanese tourism initiatives. Tokyo, for its part, moved quickly to try to reassure partners that it was not seeking provocation. But the episode has exposed how Japanese foreign policy postures are under pressure. Japan faces the challenge of balancing its long-standing security alliance with the U.S., maintaining economic ties with China, and responding to regional risks such as Taiwan's status and Chinese maritime ambitions. In speaking to Trump, Takaichi made clear that Japan views its alliance with Washington not simply as a bilateral arrangement, but as foundational to its strategic orientation in the Indo-Pacific. As she told reporters, we then exchanged a wide range of views on strengthening the Japan-US alliance, as well as on the situation and various challenges facing the Indo-Pacific region. For Japan, and especially under Takaichi's premiership, the U.S.-Japan alliance is being elevated to presidential-level priority. Since assuming office in October 2025 as Japan's first female prime minister, she has cast alliance building as a key pillar of her foreign policy. Observers note that Takaichi is seeking to channel the legacy of her predecessor and mentor, Shinzo Abe, who built a close personal relationship with Trump during his first U.S. presidency, into a new golden age of Japan-US cooperation. For Tokyo, three strategic objectives appear central. Deterring regional threats, Japan wants to send a clear signal to Beijing. Japan will not be passive in the face of a destabilizing move on Taiwan. The call to Washington strengthens signaling. Securing supply chains and economic security, Japan increasingly views China's tightening of export controls on critical minerals and rare earths as a threat to its industrial base. Cooperation with the U.S. in this area is gaining urgency. Maintaining economic credibility, Tokyo remains one of China's largest trading partners, and the China-Japan relationship still matters deeply for Japanese companies and growth. At the same time, Takaichi must navigate domestic pressure to reduce economic reliance on China while preserving stability. From Washington's perspective, the call with Tokyo allows President Trump to reaffirm Washington's commitment to its Asian allies at a time when U.S.-China competition is sharpening. It also helps the U.S. frame its Indo-Pacific strategy not just as bilateral with Japan, but as an integrated alliance-based structure. The fact that Trump proactively reached out to Takaichi in the midst of his own diplomacy with Xi signals U.S. intent to keep Japan closely in the loop. As Japanese commentary put it, the call offered reassurance to Tokyo and may have been meant to counterbalance Beijing's attempts to influence Japan via the U.S. channel. Beijing, meanwhile, has watched this dynamic closely. China claims Taiwan as part of its territory and has not ruled out use of force. The island lies just over 100 kilometers from Japanese territory, making it a core security interest for Tokyo. China's response to Takaichi's earlier remarks was swift. Travel advisories, diplomatic protests, and a boycott of certain Japanese tourism promotions were among the actions. Analysts see these as targeted warnings designed to signal China's displeasure while stopping short of full economic warfare. In this context, Tokyo's call to Washington serves multiple purposes. It underscores to Beijing that Japan has allies, elevates Tokyo's deterrent credibility, and deepens Japan's integration into U.S. strategy in the region. The way both leaders have framed their messaging matters. Takaichi emphasized what she described as the utmost friendship with Trump and positioned the U.S. Japan relationship as irreplaceable. She told reporters, "President Trump told me that I'm a very close friend of his and that I should feel free to call him at any time." That sort of rhetoric is intentional. It reinforces the personal dimension of security alliances, reminding partners that ties are not only institutional but also interpersonal. In diplomacy, signals matter. At the same time, Takaichi was careful not to dwell publicly on Taiwan or China's specific threats during the call. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara emphasized the need for stable U.S.-China ties, even as Tokyo and Beijing sparred. The call opens up several lines of inquiry for policymakers and analysts. Does Japan now lean more assertively toward the U.S. side of the U.S.-China competition? The answer appears to be yes. While Japan has long been a Washington ally, the tone has hardened under Takaichi, especially given concerns about Taiwan and China's maritime assertiveness. What about credibility and risk? When Japan speaks of responding militarily if China attacks Taiwan, the question turns to whether Japan is prepared to act and what the thresholds might be. The diplomatic fallout with Beijing shows there are costs to such language. Alliance synchronization for the U.S. Japan's involvement cements the perception that the Indo-Pacific balance is not just U.S. versus China, but a multilateral framework where Tokyo plays a visible role. Economic security and supply chains. The focus on critical minerals, rare earths, and resilience has expanded the security calculus beyond purely military concerns to industrial and strategic resource issues. Diplomatic messaging. The personal tone, "call me anytime," helps humanize the alliance, but also serves as a public reassurance to Tokyo that it will not be isolated. Of course, while the call sent strong signals, there are still uncertainties. China's next move. It remains to be seen how Beijing will respond over the medium term. Will it escalate beyond travel advisories? Will economic retaliation follow? Japan's internal politics. Prime Minister Takaichi leads a minority government and faces domestic headwinds. Her ability to deliver on defense, trade, and industrial security will be tested. Alliance commitments. While Japan is deepening cooperation, the specifics of what Japan will commit militarily in the Taiwan scenario remain vague. That ambiguity is both a strategic asset and a liability. Regional reactions. Other actors in the region, Taiwan, South Korea, Australia, ASEAN states, are watching closely. Tokyo's posture influences their calculations as much as it is shaped by them. The phone call between Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi and President Donald Trump was far more than a courtesy exchange. In a week defined by high-stakes diplomacy between Washington and Beijing, Tokyo used the moment to reaffirm its position as a core U.S. ally and assert that it will not be a passive bystander in the evolving geopolitical contest. By emphasizing personal rapport, I should call him any time, and alliance strength, Takaichi signaled that Japan intends to play a louder role. For Washington, the outreach to Tokyo underscores how the U.S. seeks to anchor its regional strategy in trusted partnerships. For Beijing, the message is clear: Japan is part of the calculus. In the face of Taiwan's uncertain future, China's assertive posture and a shifting Indo-Pacific landscape, the U.S. Japan axis is likely to become even more prominent. Tokyo under Takaichi appears ready, or at least signaling readiness for a more frontline position. Whether that translates into finer-grained commitments, deeper operational integration, or new defense architectures remains to be seen. But the strategic message is unmistakable. Japan wants its seat at the table, sustained and visible.